Tonight on Primetime, Islamabad on lockdown ahead of critical US-Iran talks. With a fragile ceasefire already under pressure, the risk of wider conflict is growing again. So can talks hold, or is the situation slipping out of control? Good evening. Diplomatic efforts are intensifying ahead of US-Iran talks in Islamabad this Saturday. Now, the UN Secretary General has warned that ongoing Israeli attacks on Lebanon poses a grave risk to the fragile US-Iran truce.
US and Iranian delegations are set to meet in Islamabad for ceasefire talks as Washington pushes to turn a temporary truce into a broader agreement. The US negotiating team, led by Vice President J.D. Vance, is being dispatched by Donald Trump following mediation efforts by Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Uncertainty also surrounds the Strait of Hormuz. While some ship movement has resumed, restrictions remain in place, and vessels may still require approval from Iranian authorities to pass. Speaking in Hungary, Vance described the ceasefire as fragile, saying progress depends on both sides negotiating in good faith. He warned the United States is prepared to resume military action if diplomacy fails. Analysts also warn that even if the ceasefire holds, the economic impact of the conflict could be severe.
If the war really ends now, if the ceasefire sticks and we're able to see a beginning of reconstruction of the damage that's been done in the region, I think we might end up looking at a total economic cost of about, let's say, 20% of the global pandemic. So very significant, but something that we'll be able to live through in a year's time, for example.
Despite the two-week ceasefire agreement, the situation on the ground remains unstable, with continued violence reported in parts of the region. Iran claims that 3 key clauses of a proposed 10-point framework had already been violated ahead of the talks, including continued fighting in Lebanon, an alleged drone incursion into Iranian airspace, and disputes over uranium enrichment. Meanwhile, the White House says Iran has abandoned its unacceptable plan and submitted a more workable proposal, while President Trump maintains firm demands, including ending uranium enrichment.
President Trump and the team determined the new modified plan was a workable basis on which to negotiate and to align it with our own 15-point proposal. The president's red lines, namely the end of Iranian enrichment in Iran, have not changed. And the idea that President Trump would ever accept an Iranian wish list as a deal is completely absurd. The president will only make a deal that serves in the best interests of the United States of America, and he as a negotiating team will focus on this effort over the next 2 weeks, so long as the Strait of Hormuz remains open with no limitations or delays.
With both sides maintaining firm positions, the outcome of the talks remains uncertain.
Well, ahead of these high-stakes peace talks between the United States and Iran in Islamabad this weekend, Pakistan has ramped up security across its capital. Hira Mustafa reports with more.
Islamabad is on high alert ahead of critical peace talks between the United States and Iran. Delegations from both countries are expected in the capital on Friday. The U.S. team will be led by Vice President J.D. Vance, while Iran's delegation is headed by Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Ghalibaf. Formal negotiations are scheduled to begin on Saturday, with Pakistan acting as the mediator between the warring parties. Officials say all eyes are on Islamabad, which is why security has been tightened across the city's red zone, home to government offices and foreign missions. The military is coordinating operations, supported by police teams and paramilitary rangers, in what authorities describe as an unprecedented security effort to avoid any untoward situation. A prominent hotel in the red zone has been vacated and reserved exclusively for the visiting delegations. Meanwhile, a U.S. security team is already on the ground, reviewing arrangements, and high security protocols are reportedly in place for the Iranian delegation. Due to security concerns, officials have not disclosed the protocol's details. Authorities have advised residents to avoid traveling to central Islamabad over the next 2 days, as markets and businesses will remain closed on April 9th and 10th. Zones close to the administrative center of Islamabad are also seeing access restrictions. Officials say that with strong diplomatic ties to both the US and Iran, Pakistan's mediation has placed Islamabad in the global spotlight. Supported by regional powers including Turkey, Egypt and Saudi Arabia, experts say the Pakistani government now faces a tough challenge of turning a temporary ceasefire into lasting peace. Analysts say everything hinges on these talks, which could shape Middle East stability and US-Iran relations in the years to come. Hira Mustafa for A News, Islamabad.
Well, Iran's ambassador in Pakistan removed his statement after announcing that a delegation will arrive in Islamabad later on Thursday to prepare the ceasefire negotiations with the US side, which he said will focus on Tehran's 10-point proposal. Our correspondent now brings the details from Tehran.
Reporting from downtown Tehran, the ralliers are chanting slogans against ceasefire and talks with the United States. In the latest development, Tehran's envoy to Islamabad, Reza Amiri Moghadam, withdrew his announcement after stating that the Iranian delegation will arrive in Pakistan's federal capital on Thursday to sort out technical aspects of truce talks with the US, reportedly scheduled on Saturday. According to local media, he has said in a post on social platform X that the upcoming talks will be held despite the skepticism of Iranian side due to repeated violations of the ceasefire by Tel Aviv to sabotage the diplomatic initiative of Pakistan to mediate between Tehran and Washington. The Iranian diplomat was referring to Israel's large-scale bombings of Lebanon, intrusion of a military drone, and U.S. denial of Tehran's right of nuclear enrichment on the first day of the 2-week truce on Wednesday. So far, it is not confirmed who will be Iran's chief negotiator in Islamabad, but unofficial reports suggested that Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf will lead the Iranian team if Vice President J.D. Vance is going to head the U.S. negotiators. It is the second day of the 2-week truce following a 39-day Israeli-U.S. war on Iran, and Tehran has condemned ceasefire breaches during President Masoud Pezeshkian's phone conversations with his Azerbaijani, French, Japanese, and Pakistani counterparts. Also, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held phone contacts on the aftermath of the ceasefire violations with his Azerbaijani, Cypriot, Finnish, Iraqi, Saudi, and Turkish counterparts, as well as Pakistani Army Chief Asim Munir. General Munir was reportedly in communication with the U.S. President Donald Trump to mediate a truce in the Israeli-U.S. war on Iran, which broke on 28th of February. Amid rising disputes between Iran and the U.S. over provisions of the ceasefire framework stipulated in their conflicting draft proposals, Speaker Ghalibaf has said that it was unreasonable to hold talks with U.S. after violations of the truce by Israel and U.S. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Well, joining us now in the studio is A News' Andy Mioch. Andy, great to see you. What's the latest then? We heard some details there from Turaj. What are we hearing about the latest preparations for these talks?
Well, we've heard from the White House. They're saying that the negotiations will start on Saturday morning. However, the Iranian Supreme National Security Council earlier said that the talks will begin on Friday and could end up lasting up to 15 days. Wow. Now, ahead of these weekend talks in Pakistan, there is a fundamental disagreement over what was already agreed when it comes to this 2-week ceasefire. Announcing the truce, Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif said that Iran and the U.S. and its allies have agreed to an immediate ceasefire. Let me just get the quote, everywhere, including Lebanon and elsewhere. However, Israel continued its campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and in yesterday's Israeli airstrikes across Lebanon, more than 200 people were killed and more than 1,000 wounded, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry, which makes it the single deadliest day in Lebanon since this war began. The Israeli Prime Minister's office at the time, at the announcement of the truce, said that Hezbollah isn't a part of this ceasefire. In later remarks, Netanyahu said Israel would strike Hezbollah wherever necessary. After that, today, we've heard from the Iranians, who obviously do not agree. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian called the Israeli strikes on Lebanon a blatant violation of the initial ceasefire, and maybe the most important part of his social media post, he said, I quote, "Such actions signal deception and non-compliance, rendering negotiations meaningless." Now, Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, seen by some as the possible head of the Iranian team for the Islamabad talks, he said that Lebanon is an inseparable part of the ceasefire and warned of strong responses to violations of the deal. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump was also asked by PBS's White House correspondent if there's a ceasefire in place, why is Lebanon being hit? He said that Hezbollah was not included in the deal and that it's a, quote, separate skirmish. And now, not even half an hour ago, we've heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He says that he instructed the cabinet to start direct negotiations with Lebanon as soon as possible. Okay. He added that the negotiations will focus on disarming Hezbollah and establishing peaceful relations between Israel and Lebanon. But maybe the key point here being in this quote, as soon as possible. Yeah. When will it be possible for the Israeli side? What do they deem as a fit situation remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, nevertheless, a significant development in the last 30 minutes, Andy. What do we know about the people attending? Touraj gave us some names. Just run us through some of the people who are going to be there negotiating together.
Well, the White House press secretary confirmed that the American team will be led by the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance. We know that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is going to be there. We know that Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, will be there. When it comes to the Iranians, there is no official word on the lineup, but as I've mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, the Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf is widely expected to be part, if not the head of the delegation. Many analysts and news outlets across the globe are expecting to see the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi there as well. And we mentioned this a bit before in the program. In a now deleted social media post, Iran's ambassador to Pakistan said that the Iranian team will arrive in Islamabad tonight for talks on those 10 points that Iran has put forward.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility, and isn't it, for Pakistan? What do we know about how they're handling security preparations?
Well, we've heard from the report on the ground that today and tomorrow have been declared public holidays, so all offices are closed, banks are closed, schools are closed, and so on. We also know that major roads in Islamabad are either closed for traffic or are being or diverting traffic. The entrances and exits from the capital are heavily monitored or blocked. Pakistan's Interior Minister met with the U.S. ambassador to Islamabad to talk on all the arrangements, security arrangements, and so on, with the ministry after that stating that a, quote, comprehensive plan has been prepared to provide foolproof security to all foreign guests. And that's about it, what we got.
Well, from officials in Pakistan then to leaders, officials around the world, when you look at the sort of who's who of major political figures, what is it that they're saying at this point?
Well, most of what we've heard today from officials across the world was in essence tied to the Israeli airstrikes on Beirut and other cities and places in Lebanon. There were some very harsh words of condemnation there. Just to list a few, Pakistan, the mediator, condemned the attacks, saying that Lebanon is indeed covered by this ceasefire. French President Emmanuel Macron condemned what he described as indiscriminate strikes on Lebanon, which he said pose a direct threat to the sustainability of the ceasefire. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, which is a rarity to have a German leader with a public rebuke of Israel, he said that he and others had asked Israel on Wednesday, so yesterday, to end its further intensified attacks, adding that, quote, the severity with which Israel is waging war could cause the failure of the peace process as a whole, and that must not happen. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said Israel's attacks were deeply damaging and that Britain wants to see Lebanon included in the ceasefire. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who has been a vocal critic of whatever Israel has been doing in the past few years, also called for Lebanon to be included in the ceasefire, adding that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's, quote, contempt for life and international law is intolerable.
Wow.
Now, Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said he summoned the Israeli ambassador, adding that Rome wants to avoid a, quote, second Gaza. Qatar's called on the international community to compel Israel to halt their, quote, brutal massacres, while the UAE reaffirmed its support for Lebanon's unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. We've heard earlier in the program what the UN Secretary General had to say, but we've also heard from the International Committee of the Red Cross saying it was outraged by the death and destruction in densely populated areas across Lebanon. Now, this is the context and all the statements we've heard, and that all maybe led to this Netanyahu statement of direct peace talks with Lebanon.
Yes, that all led to that. And where now, Andy? Obviously, it's impossible to know exactly what's going to happen. Tonally, though, how do things look? Do you get a sense that both sides are willing to compromise?
Well, Guy, at this point, it's really anyone's guess. Depends on what will exactly be on the agenda, depends on what both sides are ready to concede. We've seen a merry-go-round of harsh rhetoric culminating with the US president's threat to end the civilization. So everything is in the cards here. We know of the two multiple point proposals by both Washington and Tehran, even though the White House hasn't released the full details of the American 15-point proposal. It is believed to include that Iran needs to commit to not produce or have nuclear weapons, to hand over its highly enriched uranium. They have those 400 kilos, a bit more of the 60% purity enriched uranium, establishing limits on Tehran's defense capabilities, an end to regional proxy groups, Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas, and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. When it comes to that Iranian 10-point proposal, the country's Supreme National Security Council has laid out the key points. According to Iranian state media, they include termination of attacks on Iran and its allies in the region, lifting of international sanctions, and all those censures from the IAEA, or the International Atomic Energy Agency. There's also the request for war compensation and a request for U.S. forces to withdraw from the region. According to some of these reports, the request, one of the requests is that U.S. accepts that Iran has the right to enrichment.
Wow, so much to negotiate and everything at stake. Andy, we thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, after the ceasefire deal between the US and Iran, Israeli airstrikes have hit Lebanon, killing at least 254 people in total. Events that now threaten the ceasefire itself and the chances of the Strait of Hormuz remaining open. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu has announced that Israel is to start direct negotiations with Lebanon.
Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 254 people and wounded 1,165 across Lebanon, marking the deadliest escalation since a US-Iran ceasefire was announced. The Israeli military said it carried out large-scale strikes on Wednesday, targeting more than 100 Hezbollah command centers and military sites across Beirut, the Bekaa Valley and southern Lebanon, describing it as its largest operation since the start of the US-Israel war on Iran. It said more than 100 locations were hit in less than 10 minutes as explosions lit up Beirut's southern suburbs, with densely populated areas among the hardest hit. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemned the strikes, accusing Israel of violating international law and humanitarian principles, and warning they undermine efforts toward regional stability. Prime Minister Nawaf Salam said Lebanon welcomed the US-Iran ceasefire, but accused Israel of continuing its escalation, calling on the international community to intervene. The escalation has also deepened disputes over the scope of the truce. Iranian officials said the United States and Israel had reneged on the terms, arguing Lebanon should have been included, while Israel maintains the agreement does not apply.
But we thankfully at this
US Vice President J.D. Vance said there had been a misunderstanding, noting Iran believed Lebanon was part of the deal. But Washington had not agreed to that.
I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Now, that said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful.
The disagreement has prompted broader international calls to expand the truce.
This is an important step forward. Of course, it is a fragile peace, but we want it to lead to an agreement. The Australian government also firmly believes that this has to apply to Lebanon as well. We want to see peace in this region, and it will make a difference, and I know that many Australians are concerned about the events that are occurring in Lebanon. This is a matter of not just the impact there, but the impact that it's having right around the world.
The United Nations described the wave of strikes as appalling. Oman's foreign ministry also condemned the attacks, calling them war crimes and a violation of international law, and urged global action to hold Israel accountable. The International Committee of the Red Cross said it was outraged by the scale of death and destruction, reporting that heavy explosive weapons struck crowded neighborhoods without effective warnings. It said civilians were rushing to hospitals and searching for missing relatives as conditions worsened. Hezbollah described the strikes as war crimes targeting civilians and said they would strengthen its resolve to continue fighting.
Well, to get more insight on this rapidly escalating situation, we're joined now by Lamis Jadid, political analyst joining us from Lisbon in Portugal, who's closely following developments in Lebanon. Lamis, very good indeed to see you. Thank you very much for joining us on Primetime. I'd like to start with your analysis of the current situation in Lebanon, and also given what we've heard in the last 30 to 40 minutes from Prime Minister Netanyahu, how close are we, do you think, to the provocation being so much that actually Iran is in a sense forced to break the ceasefire?
Indeed, we are facing a very critical moment now. We just obtained 2 weeks ceasefire. Usually, such ceasefires are fragile by birth, and it seems some misunderstanding already. Everybody has a different version of the story. So the Americans come and they speak about some misunderstanding. The president, of course, and we will fix. Mr. Netanyahu, he's absolutely another version of the story. Absolutely not included to the Lebanese front comes to the 10 points of the while Iranian, they insist all were included. So I think the very coming few hours, and I think mainly the difference could be made the Pakistani actually. We are waiting for some declaration or collection from their side that could explain to you what was written exactly. But whatever was at the end of this Lebanon, that it did not have issues, most violent attack on civilians mainly. Many people go in interpreting this event as some aggression.
Lamis, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We're having some technical problems. We can't. The connection is letting us down. Unfortunately, I think we may have to leave it there. But we thank you very much indeed for your analysis. We always appreciate your time here on Primetime. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. After the break, we'll continue with more analysis on this fascinating and very serious story. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. warm welcome back to Primetime, wherever you're watching. Now, a group of US lawmakers are renewing efforts to limit President Donald Trump's military actions against Iran as political divisions deepen in Washington. Well, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says a vote next week will seek approval for any further strikes. The push follows a 2-week ceasefire announced by Trump hours after warning Tehran over the Strait of Hormuz. Schumer called the approach unhinged, saying it has failed to curb Iran's nuclear program and driven up fuel prices. The White House, meanwhile, says Trump acted within his authority, while Republicans back his policy.
Check.
Now, to break this down, we're joined by our next guest, Eugene Chazovsky, Senior Director at New Lines Institute, coming to us from Washington, D.C. Eugene, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime. Good to have you there with us. What's the latest then from Washington, where you are, on these efforts to try and limit further strikes against Iran?
Right. So I think that this effort by the House, I should say the Senate Democrats to call this war resolution, likely not going to pass. We saw a similar effort actually just today by on the House side get blocked. So we've seen obviously the opposition Democrats speak out against the war essentially from the beginning, and since had some challenges, to say the least, in recent days and weeks. But we've seen that the war has been prosecuted by that of the White House, and it's not likely to be stopped by Congress.
And what is it that the lawmakers are proposing explicitly then with this vote?
Well, I think that, there's a number of different criticisms from the Democratic side in terms of, how the war has been prosecuted. Certainly now we're in a ceasefire environment, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But the fact that the Trump administration, went into war without the congressional approval has certainly been a main sticking point on their side. Everything else is pretty much tactical details, but this is broadly a more political fight that we're seeing, typical of U.S. politics.
And does the support and the opposition to what's happening, does it broadly go along partisan lines, Eugene, or are there some interesting and notable exceptions?
Yeah, largely speaking, this does go along partisan lines. We've seen, both on the House and the Senate side, those efforts get blocked with the vast majority of the Republicans. One noticeable difference that we've been seeing in recent days was, when President Trump was threatening to basically escalate the conflict, including targeting things like power plants in Iran and other civilian infrastructure. Here we saw at least some elements of the Republican Party speak out against this, or some of the MAGA camp, although now that we are in that ceasefire environment, so obviously Trump did not follow through with those threats, that has receded somewhat. But broadly speaking, this still does very much follow along partisan lines. And we have, as many people have said, seen similar efforts fail before. What makes this push different now? Honestly, I don't think this push is very much different. I do know that most of U.S. Politicians, whether it's on the House side, on the Senate side, we've got obviously midterms coming up in just a few months. They would like to see, as I'm sure with the Trump administration, this war wrap up well before that happens. Obviously, with a lot of objectives of the U.S. not having been met yet, that's why we're seeing the continuation in some form. Although I said that we're, as I said, we're still in a fragile ceasefire environment. But certainly they want to kind of offset all of the economic implications, the disruptions that we've seen, with a lot of time to spare ahead of those midterm elections. And finally, I just wanted to get your predictions, if you like, your sense of what might happen next. I know it's extremely difficult to predict what Mr. Trump might do, let alone any of the other actors. But from what you've seen in the recent hours leading up to preparations for these talks, what is your sense about the scope of what's possible over the coming weeks? Right. Well, as you said, we're in a bit of an unpredictable and dynamic environment right now. Although I do think we're starting to see the alignment of certain elements of the conflict in terms of the U.S. wanting to draw down its operations, because the longer those go on, the more the economic and political implications make themselves felt. Iran has been in a relatively strong position, at least from the standpoint of being able to withstand the military operations. The regime is intact, and it's made its presence felt on the Strait of Hormuz. But even that cannot last forever, or else Iran risks alienating not only the U.S. but also some non-Western countries, some allied countries like China, Russia, and others. So I think in that sense there is hope that there could be some, at least, prolongation of the ceasefire. I don't know about an overall peace agreement, but one that moves the war into a new phase that's less economically and politically disruptive.
Mr. Chasovsky, we thank you very much indeed for your analysis and for joining us tonight from Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories shaping the day with Katie Wilson. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're recording Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime now. Katie Wilson has joined us with the top business news stories of the day. Katie, Katie, what's on your agenda tonight?
The Middle East is still dominating the agenda today, so we'll have the latest development on that, as well as news from Uniqlo and TikTok. So let's get started. Oil prices are climbing again as doubts grow over a fragile Middle East ceasefire. Concerns are mounting that vital energy flows through the Strait of Hormuz could remain disrupted, keeping markets on edge. Brent crude has risen sharply, reflecting uncertainty over whether the truce and safe passage for shipments will hold.
Oil prices rose on Thursday. Markets were concerned about whether a 2-week Middle East ceasefire will hold up and were unsure about energy flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Brent crude futures were up around 3% at roughly $98 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude also rose by a similar amount to just under $98 a barrel. Both benchmarks fell below $100 per barrel in the previous trading session. That was on optimism the US-Iranian ceasefire would result in the strait's reopening. But analysts still saw geopolitical risk, and there was no clarity on what US-Iran talks would mean for oil flows. The Strait of Hormuz connects supply from Gulf producers to global markets, and it usually carries about a fifth of global oil and gas supply. Shippers on Wednesday said they needed clarity on terms of the ceasefire before they continued transiting through the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian media reported the country has issued maps to guide ships around mines and show safe paths for passage. Regional oil facilities also stayed under threat. An oil industry source said Iran struck sites in nearby countries after the ceasefire. It included a pipeline in Saudi Arabia, which has been used to bypass the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, those same tensions are now rippling through the energy industry. Shell has offered an early glimpse of the impact, warning of lower gas production and a hit to short-term liquidity, even as volatile markets boost trading profits. It's a sign of how geopolitical uncertainty is reshaping earnings across the sector.
Shell gave an early sign of the effects the US-Israeli war on Iran could have on oil major earnings. The energy giant cut its first quarter gas production outlook on Wednesday, but it also signalled a surge in oil trading profit and a hit to short-term liquidity. Global benchmark Brent crude oil prices jumped in the first quarter to multi-year highs near $120 per barrel. It rose after strikes on Iran in late February led to the country shutting the Strait of Hormuz and attacking Gulf neighbours. Shell's working capital is a measure of short-term liquidity and expected to swing to between minus $10 billion and minus $15 billion. It said this reflects unprecedented commodity price volatility hitting inventory. The British firm expects working capital moves to reverse over time if oil and gas prices fall. Shell said trading results in its chemicals and products business, which includes Shell's oil trading desk, could also prove eye-catching. They are expected to be, quote, significantly higher than in the previous quarter. Shell's first quarter integrated gas production was expected to be about 880,000 to 920,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day. It previously expected 920,000 to 980,000. Shell also forecast adjusted earnings for its renewables and energy solutions units be around $200 million to $700 million. That's well up from $131 million in the fourth quarter. Shares were down more than 5% after the update.
And the fallout is also being felt in global aviation. Despite hopes that President Trump's ceasefire with Iran could ease the crisis, airline executives warn the industry faces months of disruption from high fuel costs and tight supplies. Shares may be rallying, but the outlook remains uncertain.
US President Donald Trump's 2-week ceasefire with Iran is unlikely to bring quick relief to the aviation industry, according to industry executives on Wednesday. That's even as airline shares surged on hopes the deal could ease the worst crisis carriers have faced in years. Industry officials warned that jet fuel supplies will remain tight and costly for months after damage to refining capacity across the Middle East. Delta Airlines on Wednesday forecast lower than expected profit for the second quarter and said it would cut capacity to try to offset about $2 billion in extra fuel costs it expects to book. Fuel, typically airlines' second largest cost after labour, accounts for about 27% of operating expenses. Jet fuel prices have more than doubled since the conflict erupted. It far outpaced a roughly 50% rise in crude prices before the ceasefire. Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz choked global fuel supplies, forcing airlines to hike fares, cut flights, add refuelling stops and carry extra fuel. Safety concerns have seen carriers cancel services to and from the Gulf. Oil fell below $100 per barrel after Trump said he had agreed to a 2-week ceasefire with Iran, subject to the strait's immediate and safe reopening. Despite the turmoil, airline and travel stocks rallied on expectations the ceasefire could mark a turning point. Tourism, however, also faces a long recovery. TUI said 2 of its cruise ships stranded in Abu Dhabi and Doha since the conflict began would take at least 4 weeks to return to service once conditions allow.
Over to China's largest plastics trading hub now, as rising costs are driving sharp price increases, squeezing margins and triggering panic buying. Businesses warn the pressure is building fast, with disruption in the oil industry now stretching well beyond the energy sector.
This is Zhangmutou, also known as China's Plastic City. Located east of Guangzhou, China's largest plastic trading hub has been feeling the sting of rising oil-linked costs driven by the Iran war. Plastic prices have risen sharply, squeezing margins, disrupting logistics and fueling panic buying across the supply chain. Peng Xin, the general manager of a firm that manufactures plastic pellets, says costs have surged by about 60% since March. He also says his factory's safety stocks have been depleted with new raw materials being bought at elevated market prices, costs that he says would soon trickle down to customers. Zheng Bin, marketing manager at an online trading and pricing platform for plastic raw materials, said firms have been stocking up in preparation for a longer-lasting Iran war.
With the Middle East situation unlikely to ease in the next 1 or 2 months, panic has driven people to actively stock up. Upstream petrochemical plants without crude oil and feedstock to produce with have also been forced to raise their prices.
The rush to secure supplies has also clogged warehouses and roads. Warehouse owner Han Bing says this year is the busiest year he's ever seen, with daily turnover doubling to about 1,000 tons from around 500 tons previously.
At the peak after March 5, Zhangmutou was gridlocked for nearly a week. Traffic jams stretched about 6 to 9 miles. Every warehouse was packed to capacity, and both inbound and outbound cargo were heavily affected.
China is the world's largest plastic producer, consumer and exporter of final plastic products, according to a 2025 report by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
To some other news now, and despite global turmoil, Japan's fast fashion industry is reporting strong growth. Uniqlo's quarterly profits jumped nearly 30%, and the company has since raised its full-year forecast. But with rising oil prices and supply chain pressures from the Middle East crisis, challenges may still lie ahead.
Fast retailing saw a near 30% jump in profit during the second quarter. The Japanese firm said on Thursday it rose to $1.19 billion in the 3 months through February. That was well up from a year before and easily beat analyst expectations. The Uniqlo owner also raised its full-year forecast on strong international growth to around $4.4 billion. It's up from a previous projection of $4 billion and puts the retailer on track for a 5th consecutive year of record earnings. Fast retailing's second quarter ended just before the start of the US-Israeli airstrikes on Iran. The conflict has sent oil prices soaring and hurt supply chains. Markets now face uncertainty over the possibility of a permanent peace deal. Investors will look at how the Iran crisis may impact costs for Uniqlo. One example could be how many of the brand's products are made with polyester. A Japan-based supplier to the company said on Tuesday it would raise prices on polyester fibre by a 1/5 due to higher oil prices. Europe's retailers have also warned a drawn-out Middle East conflict could drive prices higher and lower consumer demand.
And finally, some positive news from the tech world. TikTok is investing €1 billion to build a second data center in Finland, expanding its European footprint. The move aims to strengthen data protections for over 200 million users, whilst tapping into Finland's low-cost, low-carbon energy, showing growth and innovation even in uncertain times.
TikTok will build a second billion-dollar data center in Finland in less than a year. That's according to Chinese parent ByteDance Wednesday. The firm is moving data storage for European users to the continent, as nations there ramp up laws around data sovereignty and user protection. Policymakers have pushed social media platforms to protect children from addictive algorithms. TikTok said it was making a $1.16 billion investment in a data center in Lahti, a city in southern Finland. The company told Reuters it's part of a $14 billion European data sovereignty initiative, which it said will deliver industry-leading protections for the data of over 200 million European users. TikTok said its European user data is currently stored with enhanced safeguards across 3 data centers in Norway, Ireland and the US. But increasingly, Finland has become an attractive location for data centres due to low costs, low carbon energy and cool climate. TikTok's first Finnish data centre in Kouvola is to be operational by the end of this year, with the second one up by 2027.
There you have it. You're all caught up on your business news. Back to you, Guy.
Fascinating stuff as always, Katie. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, China steps in to mediate between Pakistan and Afghanistan after months of rising tensions. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News Unfiltered. analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording. Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing,
Bangkok, Tbilisi,
Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan,
Tehran,
Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul, for AU.
A warm welcome back. You are watching Primetime. China's foreign ministry said on Wednesday that Afghanistan and Pakistan agreed to explore a comprehensive solution to the conflict that broke out between the two countries last October. Our correspondent is in Beijing and brings us more now.
China announced that Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to avoid further escalation after months of border clashes, militant attacks and retaliatory measures strained relations, as Beijing stepped up diplomatic efforts to defuse rising tensions between the two countries. The tensions have been driven largely by Pakistan's accusations that Afghanistan's Taliban-led authorities are harboring or failing to act against militant operations along the frontier, allegations that Kabul strongly denies. The fallout has included cross-border exchanges of fire, airstrikes, border closures, and mass deportations of Afghan nationals from Pakistan, pushing ties to one of their lowest points in recent years. Against this backdrop, China hosted trilateral talks in Urumqi aimed at de-escalating the situation and restoring dialogue, bringing together delegations from Pakistan's foreign ministry and Afghanistan's Taliban-led administration, while positioning itself as a mediator with stakes in regional security and economic connectivity.
Both sides expressed deep appreciation and gratitude for China's mediation efforts and thoughtful arrangements as host, describing China as fair, impartial and dedicated. Afghanistan and Pakistan reaffirmed their commitment to resolving differences as soon as possible and improving bilateral relations in accordance with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and the 5 Principles of Peaceful Coexistence.
The talks, held in Xinjiang's capital and concluded yesterday, mark a renewed attempt to stabilize relations, with both sides agreeing to avoid further escalation. China said it will continue to maintain communication and facilitate dialogue to support improved Afghanistan-Pakistan ties and overall regional stability. Manu Nathun, A News, Beijing.
Well, to explore this in more detail, we're joined now by Sheraz Mahmood Khan, a research scholar at Western Caspian University. Mr. Khan, always good to have you on Primetime. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. Just lay out, if you will, Pakistan's perspective on this and what prompted this willingness to de-escalate now?
Okay, so I'll go a little in the background, is that Pakistan has been a country which has faced terrorism the most in the world. For past 10 to 15 years, Pakistan has been on the top for terrorism. It has lost 80 to 90,000 people in terms of terrorism, from a military general to a sepoy, to a bureaucrat, to a normal man, to a common man. Pakistan has lost around 80,000 people in this conflict of terrorism, and it is ranked as one of the top most country as far as terrorism is concerned. So Pakistan has always been very concerned in all that, and Pakistan has talked to the neighboring country as it was concerned that a lot of terrorism is coming from the neighboring country, Afghanistan, which has always been the brotherly country of Pakistan. We must understand that, because all the Afghan refugees have lived with Pakistan for almost 3 to 4 decades. But the problem was that the government of Taliban was not recognized by any country in the world, almost any country in the world, and it was kind of an illegitimate government. And the government of Pakistan has always been trying to talk to even this government and trying to make sure that the soil of the Afghan territory is not used against Pakistan. But there was always a surge in the terrorism the moment after the Afghan Taliban government resumed the office after the withdrawal of US forces. So there was a surge of 60 to 70% in terrorism in Pakistan, and the connections were found out by the government of Pakistan because the Afghan soil was being used. So the escalation went up, went the up lever, and obviously then there were two. One was Qatar agreement, which went in vain, and then obviously there was another agreement in the Chinese foreign minister's presence. Both of the other foreign ministers of Afghanistan and Pakistan were present. That went in vain. And then Pakistan was trying to talk to Taliban government that there are lots of miscreants, there are a lot of terrorism activities from your soil that emerge, and it ruins the very prosperity of your neighboring country, which is Pakistan. But there was again a surge of terrorism from Afghan soil, and that is the background story.
And what is the central position, the central accusation, if you like, from Islamabad towards the Taliban? Is it one of appetite to deal with terrorists? Do they question the appetite of the government, or is it more one of ability to actually get to grips with that issue?
The problem is that the only sole and one demand of Pakistan is that Afghan soil should not be used against Pakistan in any way. So the government is the one we can talk to, and the government has been, has been in negotiations with Pakistan, but nothing substantial was seen, and that's the only thing. And then obviously Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan is operating from Pakistan, from inside Afghanistan against Pakistan, and there are other several groups which are terrorist groups. There are lots of names to it, which are against, operating against the territory of Pakistan. A. B is that there is a report of, there's a Russian report which says around 25 to 30,000 miscreants and terrorists are breeding in Afghanistan. So, I mean, the kind of a territory where 30 to 40,000 people who are not only a threat for Pakistan, but threat for the region, in fact, a threat for the world. So, I mean, Taliban, I don't know whether they have a grip on that or not, but Talibans are the one who can address this issue. And you must understand that the government of Taliban is against the people's wishes, because if you see when the US withdrawal was happening, people were actually sticking, and we were actually trying to hold off the plane and they never wanted to live in this territory where it was Taliban's regime coming up. So people were really scared to that. People are really nice. People want peace. The country needs peace to go more diverse in relations with other countries. Afghanistan is potentially really good. It has a lot of minerals. It has a lot of minerals and all that, and it can connect with the world very easily because it is geographically located in a way that it is connected to almost half of the world.
Mr. Khan, we always appreciate your analysis on Primetime. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, to discuss this from an Afghanistan perspective now, we're joined by our next guest, Omar Samad, from the Atlantic Council non-resident senior fellow and former Afghan ambassador to France and Canada, who's joining us from San Francisco. Ambassador, very good indeed to see you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Let's look at this from the perspective of Afghanistan then. How is this agreement being viewed? Do you think there's genuine commitment?
Well, first of all, we have to say that this region has had a terrorism issue going back to the 1990s at least. We remember the days when the current Taliban were also ruling part of Afghanistan, when groups like Al-Qaeda, who had offices in Pakistan, and others were freely moving across the borders. Then we remember 9/11. We remember what happened then, which groups were located in the region and where the bases were. And then we also remember where Mr. bin Laden was found. So there is a history that we cannot ignore. We have to look at all of this. And then we have to move to the situation today. Yes, there is a security problem in the region. There are more than one. Some of them are geared toward a certain country like Pakistan, or maybe the Chinese or Russia, but there are also terrorist groups against Afghanistan. So on the balance, we have a region that needs cooperation. We have a region that needs dialogue. We have governments that need to talk to each other, and we have to overcome these old narratives and these blame games that really don't serve any purpose. I think that we need to come together. We need to identify the source of all of these issues, and collectively we need to take action.
I mean, talking of the blame game, I mean, how does Kabul respond to these accusations, insinuations that they're just not getting to grips with a terrorism problem?
Well, I mean, I don't speak for Kabul. Kabul today is run by the Taliban, and they have given their own perspective on this. They claim that they have, over the last 3-4 years, been able to push Islamic State Khorasan, ISK, which is an affiliate of IS, Islamic State, in the Middle East, away from Afghanistan. There are reports, intelligence reports, that say that ISK elements are found in Balochistan of Pakistan, and sometimes in the tribal regions of Pakistan. Occasionally they come into Afghanistan to create instability. They target foreigners like the Chinese and others. So that is a common problem. If Pakistan wants to fight ISK, I think they need to cooperate with the Taliban and others in the region. If we want to fight any sort of terrorist group, we need to make sure that they are multinational, that they are crossing borders, that they are not a local phenomena. Because sometimes what happens is that we confuse a local militant group, or we want to portray it as such, with a terrorist group. A terrorist group obviously has a different perspective and a different goal than a militant group within a country that has dissatisfaction with the governing body. So we need to differentiate, and we need to take action, and we need to be more responsible.
And in terms of that, perhaps the brand, if you like, of Afghanistan, the current government in Kabul. I mean, there have been signs in the past that progress was being made, diplomatic relations beginning to be established with different countries. What is the state of play now, do you think, when it comes to Kabul's reputation diplomatically in the world?
Well, Russia is the only country that has, in a de jure official fashion, recognized Kabul. Others have embassies in Kabul. Kabul has diplomats or Taliban diplomats accredited in certain countries. It's a very mixed picture. There is diplomatic, economic, other types of relationships between Kabul and many of the countries in the region, including in the Gulf states, in the Middle East, Asia, and other parts. Obviously, Kabul is not recognized yet, or the Taliban are not recognized as a de jure authority by the United Nations yet. So they have challenges, and they have to overcome those challenges, and they have to work with others. But it's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, and sometimes it takes more than two actors to come to terms on what is a shared interest. And in this case, I think that the more Pakistan and Afghanistan and others talk to each other, as we saw in Urumqi in China just this past week, I think the better it is for all sides.
And finally, Ambassador, I just want to talk about China, if we can. Tell us what you understand to be the specific role that China is playing here. And do you think it is seen as a genuinely trusted mediator?
Well, China is very close to Pakistan. China has warm relations with Afghanistan. China wants to pursue certain geo-economic goals in the region. The China-Pakistan economic corridor, the whole notion of Belt and Road is moving forward. So China has a very long-term economic interest, and for that it requires stability and peace, and obviously any hindrance or any obstacle to China's geopolitical and geoeconomic interests have to be addressed. And I think that's why China wants to play a mediating or facilitating role, and I think that it's welcomed by all sides. I hope that it will be durable and sustainable, and that it also will yield some results. Talking without results is also not helpful. I think what we want to see are verifiable results based on evidence and based on intelligence data that is credible. Otherwise, we're going to continue this blame game and these narratives of calling each other names, and then at times even attacking each other and hurting our own people, as we saw in the past few weeks. Pakistan used its air force to attack Kabul and some other areas, and there were many casualties. So this has to stop, because once you start going on that path, there is no way back, because the other side will retaliate. We see this in the Middle East right now. I think that is a big lesson for all of us.
Indeed. Ambassador, we thank you very much indeed for your analysis, for joining us on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the remaining news from around the world. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome back to Primetime. Now let's catch up on news stories from around the world. And turning to Gaza, and an Israeli airstrike has killed 4 people, including a journalist, according to local health authorities. Well, officials say a drone attack in Gaza City hit a vehicle, killing Al Jazeera journalist Mohammed Wishar and another person. Israel previously accused Wishar of links to Hamas, citing material it said was seized in Gaza, but both Hamas and Al Jazeera rejected the allegation. Well, the Committee to Protect Journalists says more than 220 media workers have been killed across Gaza, Lebanon and Israel since October 2023. Turning to Europe now, and Greece is preparing to restrict access to social media for children under the age of 15. Well, the government says the move is necessary to protect young people's mental health. The decision has sparked mixed reactions, with some supporting the measure and others questioning its effectiveness.
Greece is preparing to ban access to social media for children under the age of 15. The measure will come into force next year.
Science is clear. When a child spends hours in front of a screen, the mind does not rest. That's why we have decided to move forward with something difficult but necessary, to ban access to social media for children under 15. The regulation will be introduced during the summer of 2026 and will come into force on January 1st, 2027. Greece will be among the first countries to take such an initiative. However, I am certain it will not be the last. Our aim is also to push the European Union in this direction.
Mobile phone use has already been banned in schools, and parental control tools have been introduced for teenagers.
As an idea, it seems good to me because young people do not yet have the maturity to judge which of the stimuli they receive is true or not, which will be useful to them and which may harm them.
It should be noted that Australia was the first country to introduce restrictions on social media for users under the age of 16. The ban covers platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. Technology companies Meta, Snapchat and TikTok have expressed doubts about the effectiveness of such bans, but say they will comply with the rules. Under the new regulations, platforms that fail to enforce user restrictions could face significant financial penalties under the Digital Services Act. Greece's parliament is expected to pass the legislation in mid-2026. Discussions on tightening social media regulations are also ongoing in other countries.
Russia has threatened Baltic countries over potential drone flights after Ukraine targeted Russian ports, disrupting oil exports. Russia's foreign ministry warned that countries allowing enemy drones to use their territory must be aware of the risks. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky criticized the US for overlooking evidence that Russia had been helping Iran target American bases. In an interview, Zelensky said he tried to alert Washington, but officials trust Putin. He added that Trump negotiators visited Moscow 5 times last year without meeting Ukrainian officials and misunderstood Russia's intentions. Japan's Terra drone said it is partnering with Ukrainian company on a low-cost interceptor drone, with interest rising as cheaper aerial threats strain air defense systems.
A Japanese drone developer says it is teaming up with Ukrainian partners to produce a cheaper interceptor drone, as militaries look for lower-cost ways to stop waves of attack drones. Terra Drone says its new Terra A1 interceptor is designed to counter Shahed-type drones, which have been used extensively in Ukraine and are now drawing attention in the Middle East.
So for this current conflict in the Middle East, Shahed drones are flying one after another from Iran toward Israel. People in Japan, and overseas as well, have come to understand just how extremely important these interceptor drones are, especially since missiles are running out in the Middle East.
The company says using expensive missiles against cheaper drones is becoming harder to sustain. Terra Drone says each interceptor costs about $2,500, far less than conventional air defense missiles.
Shooting a Shahed that costs 5 million yen with a missile that costs several hundred million yen, that kind of economic irrationality just isn't feasible anymore. Demand is extremely high, and with the conflict in the Middle East, there is particularly strong interest in this technology.
The Japanese firm entered the military market through a tie-up with Ukrainian startup Amazing Drones. It says Ukraine offers strong drone innovation, but many firms still struggle with funding, overseas sales, and mass production.
In Ukraine, there are many drone companies, about 1,000, and they all have problems. The biggest issues are funding, experience selling overseas, and mass production capacity.
Russia has also reacted strongly. Moscow said on Wednesday it summoned Japan's ambassador over Terra Drone's investment in Ukraine, calling the move hostile and saying relations had reached an all-time low. The Terra A1 has not yet been battle-tested and is expected to be handed over to Ukraine's military for trials in the coming months.
Now to something a little unnerving. A US police department in Florida responded to what homeowners initially believed was a human intruder on their property during the early hours of the morning. However, this so-called human trespasser turned out to be a 9-foot alligator lurking in the home pool. Body cam footage captured the moment officers arrived and a specialist successfully wrangled the cold-blooded reptile away from the property. Let's take a look.
There we go.
So he'll just frolic around and then wear himself out?
Yeah.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
A US architect who murdered 7 women and admitted killing an 8th in a string of unsolved crimes known as the Gilgo Beach killings has pleaded guilty. 62-year-old Rex Heuermann entered the pleas in a courtroom packed with reporters, police and the victim's relatives. He also admitted the killing of an 8th woman, Karen Vergata, who disappeared in 1996. He will be sentenced in June to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Well, an historic journey to the far side of the moon is coming to an end, with 4 astronauts on board the Artemis II now heading home after pushing the boundaries of human spaceflight.
My esteemed
4 astronauts on board the Artemis II mission are now on their way back to Earth after a historic journey around the far side of the moon, marking the first mission of its kind in 50 years. The crew, NASA astronauts Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover and Christina Koch, alongside Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen, launched from Florida last week. Just a few days later, they reached the moon, flying past its shadowed far side and becoming the most distant humans ever to travel in space. There have also been lighter moments along the way, including a call with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who spoke with the crew about their experiences and what they've learned, and said Canadians are very proud.
As I say, Canadians are so proud of what you're doing and the collaboration, and I just want to have a chance, if I may. I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with you, Jeremy, and the crew. We've all been watching and inspired by what you're doing. And
Prime Minister, I did want to.
During the call, Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen held up a national flag bearing the Prime Minister's title to the cameras.
Yeah, so I wrote your name on the back. Well, your title on the back.
Earlier in the week, during a 6-hour flyby, the astronauts broke a record set by the Apollo 13 mission, reaching around 252,000 miles from Earth, about 4,000 miles farther than any crew before. On flight day 7, as they began heading home, the crew linked up with astronauts aboard the International Space Station, describing their unique view of the moon while capturing remarkable images during the lunar flyby.
By phone from the USS
NASA says the Orion spacecraft remains in good condition, with all systems running smoothly as the crew makes their return journey. Back on Earth, scientists have been closely monitoring every stage, analyzing both live and recorded communication to better understand the moon and the wider solar system. The mission is part of NASA's wider Artemis program, a multi-billion-dollar effort designed to return humans to the moon by 2028 before China and to build a lasting American presence there over the next decade. The astronauts are expected to return on Friday evening, splashing down off the coast of California after nearly 10 days in space. Their return will mark the end of a landmark mission and another major step towards sending humans deeper into space.
Venezuela's acting president Delcy Rodriguez says the government will raise workers' incomes from May the 1st, linking the move to expected gains in the oil and mining sectors.
We must correct our past mistakes. We recognise them, we fix them, and we must not repeat them. I announce that on May 1st we will make an increase, and as we have said, it will be a responsible increase. And in the near future, as Venezuela has more resources that allow for sustainable improvements in wages and workers' income, we will continue moving forward along that path.
Now, in other news, to Europe now, and a story from France. A deadly incident off Calais has underscored the risks faced by migrants attempting channel crossings. It also highlights shifting smuggling routes and tightening coastal security in northern Europe.
4 people died after a group of migrants attempted to board an inflatable dinghy to cross the channel from France to Britain, prompting a rescue operation off the coast of Calais.
There were around 30 migrants who came out and tried to reach a taxi boat, and unfortunately, the boat capsized. They were not successful. They certainly ran into a tidal pool, I think. Then they all fell into the water, and 4 people died. 2 women and 2 men lost their lives.
Over the past year, traffickers seeking to evade police have increasingly used inflatable dinghies to travel along the coasts of northern France and Belgium, picking up migrants along the shore. EU border agency Frontex said the shift to Belgian beaches is mainly due to the intensification of French coastal patrols.
Those smuggling organizations, those criminal organizations, they never take people from the country they were born in to the UK. It's always in bits and pieces, and those people are transported to one place and they have to pay extra to get another part of the transport.
Migrants pay about $2,000 to smugglers with no guarantee of boarding a boat, and sometimes face threats and abuse, including sexual violence, authorities say.
Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's visit to Moscow reignites debate as analysts highlight the legal basis for Azerbaijan's territorial sovereignty.
With less than 2 months remaining until crucial parliamentary elections in Armenia, one of Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's central messages has been that the vote represents a choice between peace with Azerbaijan, supported by his civil contract party, and a return to war should the opposition come to power. At the same time, Armenia's relations with Russia and the question of Moscow's influence on the electoral process are coming under increasingly close scrutiny. In recent days, both President Vladimir Putin, who has been engaged in a public exchange with Prime Minister Pashinyan, and the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov have referred back to the 6th of October 2022, when Azerbaijan and Armenia mutually recognized each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty in line with international law and UN principles. Both have characterized that moment as one in which Armenia itself acknowledged Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan, effectively compelling Russia to accept this reality.
If we will consider the dialogue between Putin and Pashinyan, we can clearly see that even with the smile on their faces, they are actually tried to manipulate each other, and the main manipulation of Putin on the Russian side in this dialogue was the topic of the Karabakh, the topic that actually, due to international law, cannot be even talking the status of Karabakh or anything related to the future of Karabakh cannot be talked between Russia and Armenia.
The focus is now on the Prague Agreement of October 2022, when Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev confirmed commitments to the UN Charter and the 1991 Almaty Declaration, defining the legal basis for bilateral relations and Armenia's acceptance of international law and borders.
I would highlight that by the international law, the Karabakh have never been a zone on, let's say, dispute. It was always a part of Azerbaijan, and Armenia recognized it in Prague. And actually, the Washington summit confirmed that 2 states are considering each other's and confirming each other's sovereignty, territorial integrity.
Karabakh is treated not as a separate subject of recognition, but as part of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territory, with historical continuity across different state formations. The agreement also reflects the principle of iudi possidetis juris from the 1991 Almaty Declaration, ensuring borders are inviolable rather than recognizing any specific region.
Overall, we should state that, of course, talking about about the Karabakh issue, it should not be on the agenda of the foreign policy of Russia and should not be a topic of discussion between Armenia and Russia. And the second, the Karabakh is the part of Azerbaijan, and only Azerbaijan can talk about it on the international arena, on the bilateral discussions with some countries, but it's not the cup of tea of Russia.
Analysts say the Prague statement reinforced territorial sovereignty and mutual recognition, providing a legal framework for peaceful relations, while highlighting that Moscow's statements are attempting to shift the focus to political narratives rather than law.
Now, this is somewhat unusual, but would you ever eat soil? Well, in London, visitors are being invited to do exactly that, as it explores a practice rooted in cultures around the world.
The Museum of Edible Earth is inviting London visitors to sample an unusual delicacy that it said has been part of cultures around the world for centuries, earth itself. Somerset House is hosting the exhibition, which explores geophagy, the practice of eating earth for health, ritual, and culinary purposes. Artist and researcher Masharu has collected over 600 samples of soil, chalk, and mineral-rich earths from 44 countries. The museum's room features a tasting table in the center where visitors can eat 2 edible samples, including Luvos healing earth from Germany and diatomaceous earth from Mexico. Before tasting, staff explain the stories behind the samples, where they come from, why they are consumed, and any perceived benefits. Curator Kinari Saraya said that there are a number of reasons why people eat earth and included it in their daily routines.
So there's different reasons that have been documented across different geographies. Some of it is to do with cravings of pregnant women. Some of it's to do with medicinal reasons, religious reasons, for digestion as well. And it's quite similar to how we think about soil and vegetables, because they're all kind of growing as part of the same ecosystem. So it's well documented across different cultures and religions to actually have this earth in their daily routines.
Visitors are encouraged to record their tasting impressions on compostable cards, helping to build an archive of experiences.
My relationship with I guess, clay, I didn't really know why we did it when I was back in Cameroon, but coming out of there and doing a little bit of research, I think it helps. So Cameroon is a pretty underdeveloped country, and I think a lot of areas struggle to find food, basically. So I think eating a little bit of clay helps kind of suppress the hunger and the famine sometimes, and it keeps you going for ages.
I think how normal it was, I expected it to be something kind of crazy, very crunchy, very different, but it really was a normal food experience. The taste wasn't drastically different, and also just realizing how I can put it into everyday life. It's a lot more simple than what I thought.
Museum of Edible Earth has been presented in more than 22 countries and will run in London until 26th April.
Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our A News correspondents around the world for the very latest developments in their regions. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome back to Primetime. Now let's check in with those A News correspondents all around the world. And tensions are rising between the United States and NATO after President Donald Trump criticised the alliance's limited role during the Iran conflict and signalled possible consequences for some member states. Our US correspondent sent this.
The Trump administration has blasted the North Atlantic Treaty Organization for not supporting the U.S. during Operation Epic Fury, a military campaign against Iran's missile and nuclear development program that has largely seen NATO on the sidelines. New reports suggest that the Trump administration is considering to punish some NATO members deemed unhelpful during the Iran war, including potentially relocating U.S. military bases from Europe. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt on Wednesday said that President Trump believes that NATO was tested and they failed during the Iran war. That's according to the White House. The increased tensions with NATO come as President Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte met at the White House. Rutte is known for having a warm relationship with Trump, but the president has been increasingly publicly critical of NATO. In recent weeks, Trump has called NATO a, quote, paper tiger that is unhelpful in times of need. Asked by a reporter earlier this month about withdrawing from the alliance, Trump said, "Wouldn't you if you were me?" Trump's conversation with Rutte was described by officials as being, quote, very frank and candid. Trump has called for countries that depend on oil from the Arabian Gulf region to break Iran's chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. But European countries are unlikely to join mine clearing or other such missions to free up navigations as long as hostilities continue, according to diplomats. During their private meeting, Rutte expressed a shared interest in restoring normal maritime trade after the conflict caused energy prices to spike globally. The NATO Secretary General is believed to have also highlighted steps that European member states are taking in increasing their defense spending. That's something that Trump has repeatedly been pushing for NATO allies to do more when it comes to burden sharing. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is reportedly considering pulling U.S. troops from NATO allies that refused to support the Iran military campaign and redeploying them to countries that backed U.S. military efforts. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington.
Afghanistan's disaster management authorities say a new wave of natural disasters has deepened the humanitarian crisis across the country, with more deaths, injuries and widespread damage reported in just the last 24 hours. Well, officials warn the toll could rise further as more rain and flooding are forecast in the days ahead. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
Afghanistan's National Disaster Management Authority says at least 15 people have been killed and 18 others injured in the past 24 hours alone as flash floods, heavy rainfall and related disasters continue to batter several provinces. The agency says the damage to homes has also been severe, with 139 houses completely destroyed and a further 657 partially damaged. According to ANDMA, these latest casualties bring the overall toll from the past 2 weeks to 148 dead, 216 injured and 8 people still missing. Officials say the wave of disasters began around March 26th and has since affected 28 provinces across Afghanistan, from north to south and east to west. The impact has been especially harsh in rural communities where families have lost homes, farmland and livelihoods. Residents in flood-hit areas are also facing mounting financial losses, adding to the strain on already vulnerable communities. The disaster has also disrupted transport and relief efforts. Afghan officials say several major roads, including the Kabul-Jalalabad Highway, the Salang Pass and the Kabul-Herat Highway, were closed because of flooding, landslides and heavy snowfall. The closures are hampering travel and making it harder for aid to reach affected areas. ANDMA is warning that more rainfall and flash floodings are expected in the coming days, fueling fear that humanitarian situation could get even worse. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has spoken with his US counterpart about the fragile ceasefire with Iran as Ankara urges restraint and pushes for a lasting settlement. Well, the call comes amid cautious optimism following the announcement of the truce. Here are the details.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a phone call late Wednesday with US President Donald Trump to discuss the fragile ceasefire with Iran. In the phone call, Erdogan warned against any actions that might undermine the truce, according to Turkey's communications directorate. Erdogan also told Trump that the ceasefire, which was brokered by Pakistan, represented an important opportunity to reach a permanent peace agreement. Earlier the same day, Erdogan had welcomed the ceasefire, saying it should be fully implemented on the ground without leaving room for what he called provocations or sabotage. The ceasefire, announced earlier this week amid escalating hostilities in the region, has significantly reduced cross-border strikes, although tensions remain high. However, disagreements have emerged over the scope of the truce, especially as to whether it applies to Lebanon. Israeli officials have said that hostilities involving Hezbollah in Lebanon are not covered by the ceasefire, while Iran and others say the agreement should include all fronts linked to the conflict. The uncertainty has raised concerns that continued exchanges of fire along the Lebanese front could undermine the broader ceasefire. Turkey, for its part, has called for restraint across all theaters, warning that any escalation could jeopardize diplomatic efforts. In a related development, humanitarian assistance from Turkey has begun reaching Iran. 3 Turkish trucks laden with medical supplies crossed into western Iran on Wednesday through the Gurbulak border gate in Turkey's eastern Ağrı province. According to state media, the aid convoy was organized by the local health directorate in the Turkish city of Van. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Kazakhstan says its key oil export route remains stable despite recent attacks on infrastructure linked to the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Now, authorities confirm that suppliers are continuing as normal even after damage was reported at facilities near Russia's Black Sea coast. Our correspondent Fariza Kalamazina has more from Almaty.
Attacks on the infrastructure of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium have not disrupted the flow of Kazakh oil, with shipments continuing as normal. Kazakhstan's Vice Minister of Energy Sanjar Jarkeshev confirmed this while commenting on the recent incidents. He says Kazakhstan and its international partners are doing everything possible to maintain stable supplies. The comments come after drone strikes on April 5th near Novorossiysk, targeting facilities of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. Parts of the coastal oil facilities were damaged and several storage tanks caught fire. These strikes come as Ukraine continues efforts to target Russia's oil infrastructure, which it sees as a key source of funding for the war. For Kazakhstan, however, the impact is significant. Experts say that since November 2025, the country has lost more than $2 billion in revenue due to disruptions in oil flows, reduced export volumes, and operational constraints within the system. Around 80% of Kazakhstan's oil exports pass through the CPC system, a strategic route stretching roughly 1,500 kilometers from oil fields in the west of the country to the Black Sea, where crude is shipped to global markets. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
The future of Georgia's deep sea infrastructure is back in focus as the government announces a major cost reduction and restart of the Antalya report project, an initiative with significant economic and geopolitical implications. Our correspondent reports now with more from Tbilisi.
The government of Georgia says it has reduced the cost of the Antalya deep sea port project by more than 25%, saving approximately $52.5 million. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze stated that this was achieved after revising agreements with contractors and supervisory companies, describing the process as serious optimization of state spending. Originally valued at over $200 million for key components such as seabed deepening and breakwater construction, the project is now set to resume in Antalya in the coming days. However, questions remain about transparency and long-term financial planning. The government has not clearly identified a major international investor at this stage, emphasizing instead that Georgia is open to foreign participation, including from the United States and European partners. Officials claim that multiple offers and tenders have been made, but acknowledge limited visible interest so far. Opposition figures, including at Davitaya, argued that delays in the port development have already weakened Georgia's regional influence. Critics also question whether the government is fully committed, pointing to previous budget cuts and shifting financial figures. Beyond economics, the Antalya port carries major geopolitical weight. Located on the Black Sea, it is seen as a strategic transit hub connecting Europe and Asia. Debate continues over whether Georgia should prioritize Western investment or risk increased influence from regional powers such as China or Russia. Analysts note that the absence of strong American involvement could shift the balance, potentially affecting Georgia's long-term strategic alignment. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Well, that brings us to the end of Primetime. Please do join us again tomorrow night, though, with plenty more news and analysis for you. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching. Tonight on Primetime, Islamabad on lockdown ahead of critical US-Iran talks. With a fragile ceasefire already under pressure, the risk of wider conflict is growing again.